Welcome back to the channel Rare Coins History, the place where ordinary coins tell extraordinary stories. If you're someone who loves to dig into history, explore the hidden world of rare currency, or maybe just dream of turning pocket change into life-changing money, then buckle up, because today's episode is all about a coin that many people have seen, but very few have truly looked at closely. We're talking about the 1971 Washington quarter dollar. At first glance, it might seem like just another coin you've used at a vending machine or flipped into a tip jar. But stick around, because what if I told you that one of these seemingly ordinary quarters, under the right conditions, with the right features, could be worth a staggering amount of money? Yes, even a quarter can carry a secret. And by the end of this video, you'll find out exactly how one of these coins could be worth a shocking $96,000, but before we talk numbers, let's travel back in time to understand why the 1971 Washington quarter is anything but ordinary. The early 1970s in America were a time of massive change. The Vietnam War was still raging. The civil rights movement had shaken the nation into social transformation. Nixon was in the White House, and the world was watching the U.S. with both hope and tension. It was a decade of unrest, music, rebellion, and invention. In the middle of all this, the U.S. Mint continued its regular job, striking coins to keep the economy flowing. And one of the coins rolling out of those presses in huge numbers was the Washington quarter. Now, the Washington quarter had already been a staple in U.S. currency since 1932, when it was first minted to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. Sculpted by John Flanagan, the coin features a striking profile of the first president on the obverse front, and, at that time, an eagle with outstretched wings perched on a bundle of arrows on the reverse. But 1971 was different. Because this was the first full year that the U.S. Mint was producing quarters with no silver at all. That's right, before 1965, quarters were 90% silver. But by 1971, rising silver prices had changed everything. From that point on, Washington quarters were made of a copper-nickel-clad composition, 2 layers of copper-nickel alloy surrounding a pure copper core. These coins looked silver, but they weren't. This change didn't just affect the value of coins, it affected how they aged, how they wore down, and even how they were struck. And because of the sheer number of coins produced in 1971, many of them were used, abused, and discarded without a second thought. But here's the kicker: not all 1971 quarters were created equal. These coins were minted at 3 U.S. mint facilities: Philadelphia, No Mint Mark; Denver, D Mint Mark; San Francisco, S Mint Mark. If you take a look just to the right of Washington's ponytail, you'll see either a D, an S, or no letter at all. That tells you where it came from. Philadelphia minted over 109 million quarters that year. Denver produced more than 258 million. And San Francisco, which mostly struck proof coins, made a little over 3.2 million. That's a lot of coins, but here's the twist: finding one in high-grade condition, with full details, sharp strikes, and possibly even a rare error, that's the real treasure. Let's break this down. What makes a 1971 quarter valuable? First, condition. Most quarters from 1971 are heavily circulated. They're scratched, worn, and faded. But once in a while, a coin surfaces that somehow escaped all that. A coin that looks just as fresh as the day it was minted. These are known as mint state coins. And the higher the grade, say MS 65, MS 67, or even higher, the more valuable it becomes. Second, errors and varieties. Here's where things get exciting. There are known 1971 quarters with double dies, where parts of the design, like the date or the word Liberty, appear to be doubled due to a misalignment in the minting process. Then there are off-center strikes, where the coin is slightly misaligned and part of the design is missing. Some quarters are known to have clipped planchets, where a portion of the coin's edge is missing due to a miscut. There are also reports of wrong planchet errors, where a quarter was struck on a blank meant for another denomination, like a dime. These rare and unusual mistakes can turn a regular 25-cent piece into a collector's dream. Then there's the holy grail of coin collecting: proof errors. Imagine finding a 1971 S-proof quarter with a dramatic minting flaw, in untouched condition, and maybe even with full cameo contrast, where the design is frosted but the background is mirror-like. These rare proofs can fetch astonishing prices, but here's something even more fascinating. Coins are often graded by professional services like PCGS and NGC. These grading companies assign a number between 1 and 70 to a coin's condition, and collectors pay huge premiums for coins that score high. A 1971 quarter graded MS-67 or MS-68 is extremely rare, and extremely valuable. Fewer of those coins exist than most people realize. So how do you find one of these valuable quarters? Start by checking your change. Yes, seriously. While the odds are slim, coins do slip through the cracks. Then, look through old coin rolls, family coin albums, or boxes stored in attics. Use a magnifying glass to check for mint marks, look for doubling in the lettering, and examine the edges and surfaces for anything unusual. If something catches your eye, and especially if it looks brand new, don't clean it. Cleaning a coin can ruin its surface and destroy its value. Instead, store it safely and consider sending it to be professionally graded. Now let's take a moment to appreciate the design. The obverse features George Washington, stoic and strong, facing left. The word Liberty arches across the top, "In God We Trust," to the left, and the date at the bottom. The reverse shows a majestic eagle, wings spread, perched on arrows with olive branches beneath, a powerful symbol of peace and defense. This design, which ran from 1932 until the State Quarters program began in 1999, is one of the most recognized and collected designs in American coin history. It's a connection to the country's past, its ideals, and its enduring legacy. And now, after all this history, all this detail, and all the things to look for, let's get to the moment you've been waiting for. How much is the right 1971 Washington quarter worth? If you happen to be one of the incredibly lucky people to own a 1971 quarter in near-perfect mint state condition, with a rare mint error, possibly struck on the wrong planchet or showing clear double die features, and especially if it's been professionally graded in the top percentile, then that simple 25-cent coin could be worth as much as $96,000. Yes. You heard that correctly. A single quarter, worth $96,000. That's the kind of surprise that turns casual collectors into serious treasure hunters overnight. So the next time you're holding a 1971 quarter, take a second look. Because you never know, you might just be holding more than change. You could be holding history. You could be holding a story. And just maybe, you could be holding a hidden fortune. Today, we're diving deep into a coin that most people overlook, but a few lucky individuals have learned is worth far more than 25 cents. We're talking about the 1979 Washington quarter dollar, a coin millions of people have touched, but only a small handful truly understand. It might just be sitting in your car's cup holder or hiding in the bottom of your change jar. But make no mistake, under the right circumstances, this unassuming quarter can be worth an absolutely unbelievable amount of money. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll discover exactly how one 1979 Washington quarter, with the right mint mark, the right condition, and a little twist of rarity, could be worth as much as $92,000. But before we get into the jaw-dropping numbers, let's take a step back in time to understand why the 1979 quarter deserves a second look. The late 1970s was a fascinating time in American history. The nation was rebounding from the turmoil of the Vietnam War, recovering from the Watergate scandal, and facing a challenging economy with high inflation. It was also the dawn of a technological revolution. Sony had just released the Walkman. NASA was preparing for the space shuttle era. The cultural and economic landscape was changing rapidly, and amidst all this, the U.S. Mint continued its steady work of producing the coins that fuel everyday commerce. One of those coins was the Washington quarter, originally introduced in 1932 to honor the 200th birthday of George Washington. The Washington quarter had become a staple in American wallets. Designed by sculptor John Flanagan, the coin features a left-facing bust of the nation's first president, framed by the words, "Liberty," at the top and, "In God We Trust," on the side. On the reverse side, an eagle stands proudly on a bundle of arrows, framed by olive branches, a balance between strength and peace. But by 1979, the quarter had undergone some subtle but significant changes, and that's where things start to get interesting. First, let's talk composition. Like all quarters minted after 1965, the 1979 Washington quarter was no longer made of silver. Instead, it had a copper core with an outer layer of cupronickel, a silver-colored blend of copper and nickel. The silver look remained, but the intrinsic value of the metal was no longer what it used to be. So if you're checking a 1979 quarter hoping it's silver, sorry, it's not, but the value of a coin isn't always about the metal. Sometimes, it's about the mint, the condition, and the unexpected errors that slip through the cracks. In 1979, quarters were minted at 3 U.S. mint facilities: Philadelphia, which didn't use a mint mark in that year; Denver, represented by a small D; and San Francisco, which used an S mark and was responsible for proof coins, those highly detailed, mirror-like strikes made especially for collectors. Most of the quarters minted that year were heavily circulated. They've been in vending machines, pockets, purses, and parking meters. But a select few were spared, untouched, uncirculated, and carefully preserved by collectors or forgotten in mint sets. These rare survivors are where the treasure lies. Now, what really elevates a 1979 Washington quarter from common to extraordinary? The answer is simple: condition, rarity, and error. Varieties. Let's start with condition. Coins are graded on a 70-point scale. The higher the grade, the more perfect the coin. A 1979 quarter graded MS 65 or higher, especially with a strong strike and a clean surface, is considered highly collectible. But when you cross into grades like MS 67 or MS 68, the value increases exponentially. That's because so few coins have survived in such pristine condition, especially from mass production years like 1979. Then come the errors and die. Varieties. That's where things get exciting. Some 1979 quarters were struck with off-center designs, where the die and the blank planchet were misaligned. Others have been found with double dies, especially in the letters or the date, where a second impression was made slightly askew. These are extremely desirable. Even more fascinating are wrong planchet errors. Imagine a 1979 quarter accidentally struck on a nickel or dime planchet. That would result in a coin that's the wrong size or weight. These anomalies are incredibly rare and often go unnoticed for years. Yet for collectors, they're pure gold. And what about proof errors? San Francisco minted proof coins in 1979 with an S mint mark. These coins are known for their mirror-like finish and sharp details, and they were never meant to circulate. However, a small number of proof coins occasionally escaped into circulation or were struck with flaws like missing layers, frosted versus mirror reversals, or no mint mark at all, a phenomenon that collectors call a no-S error. These rare minting mistakes are so valuable because they were not supposed to happen, and only a few were ever found. So if you've got a 1979 quarter, especially one with an S mint mark, take a closer look. Examine the fields. Use a magnifying glass. Look at the edge, the surface, the letters, and the mint mark. A tiny difference could mean a massive value jump. Now let's bring in the big guns. Grading services. If you think you found something special, say, a pristine 1979 D quarter with no scratches, full luster, or a strange anomaly, your next move is to send it to a professional grading company like PCGS or NGC. These companies examine every microscopic detail of your coin, assign it a grade, and place it in a tamper-proof holder with certification. Once your coin is graded, it becomes part of the verified collector's market, and that's when the real magic happens, because a coin that was once worth 25 cents could now be worth, well, let's not spoil it just yet. So where might you find one of these valuable quarters? Here's the fun part, they're still out there. You could find one in your change, in a coin roll from the bank, in your grandparents' dresser drawer, or hidden in an old coffee can in the attic. Many people have no idea they're holding onto something rare. And that's what makes coin collecting so thrilling. You're not just collecting metal. You're collecting stories, history, and, sometimes, serious money. Now, after all this talk of errors, mint marks, and grading, it's time for the moment you've been waiting for, what is the true value of a 1979 Washington quarter in exceptional condition? If you're one of the extremely fortunate people to discover a 1979 quarter with a rare minting error, perhaps a double die, a wrong planchet, or a dramatic proof variety, and that coin is in near-perfect mint state condition, professionally graded at the highest levels, then your ordinary-looking quarter could be worth as much as $92,000. Yes, you heard that right. One quarter, just 25 cents, potentially worth $92,000. So the next time you hear that familiar jingle of coins in your pocket, pay attention. Take a closer look. Because sometimes, treasure doesn't come from deep within the earth or locked away in a vault. Sometimes, it's right there in your hand, disguised as pocket change. Today, you're in for a special treat, because we're taking a deep dive into a coin that's as common-looking as they come, but has some secrets buried beneath the surface. The coin we're spotlighting today is none other than the 1983 Washington quarter dollar, a coin most people have handled hundreds of times in their lives, yet never gave a second thought. But after today's video, you'll never look at a quarter the same way again. Why? Because under very specific circumstances, this 1983 quarter could be worth far more than just 25 cents. In fact, one rare example of this coin could be worth as much as $84,000, and yes, we're going to tell you exactly what makes it so valuable. But before we talk about the numbers, let's go back in time. Let's rewind to 1983. The early 80s were a unique era in American history. Ronald Reagan was president. MTV was changing the way we listened to music. The economy was on the rebound after a recession. Star Wars was still fresh in pop culture. And while all that was going on, the U.S. Mint was doing what it does best, producing coins for commerce. That year, millions of quarters were struck at various mint locations across the country to keep the economy rolling. Now, the Washington quarter has been in production since 1932, created to honor the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. Designed by John Flanagan, the coin features Washington's iconic profile on the obverse, or front, with the word "Liberty" above, "In God We Trust" to the left, and the date at the bottom. The reverse features a bold American eagle, wings spread, perched on a bundle of arrows with olive branches beneath, a strong symbol of America's readiness for peace, but preparation for defense. But in 1983, the quarter was quietly entering a new chapter. What made this year so different? It comes down to supply, rarity, and preservation. You see, in 1982 and 1983, the U.S. Mint did something that few people outside the numismatic world even know about. It did not produce mint sets for collectors. That might sound like a small detail, but it's actually a big deal. Without official mint sets being released to the public in 1983, collectors didn't have access to the usual pristine, uncirculated coins they'd get in other years. That means that most 1983 quarters, the ones you find today, were heavily circulated. They were tossed in vending machines, dropped on sidewalks, thrown in cash registers, and spent without a second thought. As a result, finding a 1983 quarter in gem uncirculated condition is extremely difficult. It's one of the toughest modern quarters to find in top-grade condition. Let's talk about mint marks next. In 1983, Washington quarters were struck at two major U.S. mint locations, Philadelphia and Denver. If your coin has no mint mark, it was minted in Philadelphia. If it has a small D on the front, to the right of Washington's ponytail, it was struck in Denver. There were no proof coins produced for circulation that year. San Francisco did produce proofs, but again, those didn't go into mint sets. So nearly everything that ended up in the public's hands was used in everyday commerce, making high-quality survivor coins rare. And that brings us to what makes some 1983 quarters incredibly valuable: condition and error varieties. Let's start with condition. Coins are graded on the 70-point Sheldon scale. Anything graded MS 60 and above is considered uncirculated. But coins that reach MS 65, MS 66, MS 67, or even MS 68, now those are scarce, especially for 1983 quarters. Why? Because they weren't saved. Collectors didn't have mint sets. They didn't set aside clean examples. These coins were simply spent. So any quarter from that year that somehow avoided scratches, dings, and general wear is now an extremely sought-after piece, but there's even more. Enter the world of errors and varieties. Some 1983 quarters were struck on improperly prepared planchets, or coin blanks. Others show signs of double die errors, particularly noticeable on the date, lettering, or Washington's profile. These doubled designs happen when the die shifts during the minting process, causing a blurry or doubled look. They're rare, and collectors absolutely love them. Another known error from 1983 is the reverse cut error, where a chunk of metal is missing on the die, causing a raised, blob-like area on the coin. These cuts are especially desirable when they're large and easy to spot, but the most famous 1983 quarter error is perhaps the 1983 piece struck on a copper planchet, a rare and strange mistake that has fetched thousands of dollars at auction. And then there's the ultimate combination, a high-grade coin, with a rare error, from a year where few uncirculated examples exist. That, my friends, is the perfect storm for serious value. Now, if you think you have a 1983 quarter that looks cleaner, shinier, or more detailed than usual, don't clean it. Cleaning a coin can destroy its collector value. Instead, handle it carefully, hold it by the edges, and consider submitting it to a professional grading company like PCGS or NGC. Once your coin is graded, certified, and sealed, it becomes an official part of the collector world, and that's where serious collectors start paying attention. You might be wondering, how would someone even know if their 1983 quarter is valuable? It comes down to the details. A quarter with sharp strike lines, no surface wear, full luster, and maybe even a visible minting error could be worth far more than face value. Coins that have been verified in MS-67 or higher grades from that year are incredibly rare, and when one with an error hits the market, collectors open their wallets fast. Now, let's bring it all home. That we've talked about the history. We've explored the mint marks, the missing mint sets, the difficulty of finding pristine 1983 quarters, and the power of error varieties. We've covered grading, we've touched on rarity, and we've walked through the kind of coin that truly stands out. So, here it is. If you are fortunate enough to come across a 1983 Washington quarter in extraordinary uncirculated condition, with a unique minting error, especially one that's been professionally graded and certified at a high level, then that 25-cent coin could command a value of up to $84,000. Yes, a single quarter, worth $84,000. It's not a dream. It's not a rumor. It's real, and it's happened. And the best part? These coins are still out there, hiding in plain sight, waiting to be found by someone who knows what to look for. So, before you drop that next quarter into a soda machine, or toss your change into a jar, take a moment. Look closely. Because what seems like ordinary currency might just be an extraordinary piece of history. Today, we're zooming in on a fascinating piece from the United States, the 1988 Washington quarter dollar. On the surface, it might look like any other quarter, but dig a little deeper, and you'll find a coin with a story, rarity, and value that could blow your mind. The Washington quarter has been a staple of American currency since 1932, honoring George Washington with a timeless design. But the 1988 edition carries more than just history. It holds secrets that only the most eagle-eyed collectors know about. So, buckle up, because by the end of this video, you might just discover that your loose change is worth far more than you ever imagined. First, let's set the scene. The late 1980s were an interesting period for U.S. coinage. The economy was growing, and the U.S. Mint was producing coins in massive quantities to keep up with demand. The 1988 Washington quarter was struck primarily at two mints, Philadelphia and Denver. The Philadelphia minted coins bear no mint mark, while those from Denver are marked with a D right beside Washington's ponytail. While millions of these quarters were produced, what makes the 1988 quarter stand out isn't its sheer quantity but rather its condition, subtle variations, and some fascinating mint errors that make certain specimens highly sought after. One major factor influencing the value of the 1988 quarter is the condition. Circulated quarters are common, but those that survive decades in mint condition are a rare find. In the numismatic world, coins are graded on a scale from poor to perfect mint state, with high-grade examples being especially valuable. An uncirculated 1988 Washington quarter, especially one graded MS 65 or higher, can attract significant interest from collectors. Now, what about mint errors? These are deviations that occur during the minting process, making some coins one of a kind. For the 1988 Washington quarter, notable errors include double dies, where parts of the design appear double due to a misalignment during striking, and off-center strikes, where the coin's image is shifted, leaving part of the design missing. Such errors are incredibly rare and can turn an ordinary quarter into a collector's treasure. Another intriguing rarity involves composition anomalies. While quarters after 1965 are mostly copper-nickel clad, some 1988 quarters have been discovered with unusual metal compositions or planchet flaws that add to their uniqueness. Coins exhibiting these anomalies are often highly prized at auctions. Collectors also seek out coins with full, sharp details and no surface blemishes. The better the preservation, the higher the value. Some 1988 quarters have been found with a brilliant, almost mirror-like finish, which is extremely unusual for a coin that's over 3 decades old. If you're someone who stumbles upon a 1988 Washington quarter in a perfect, uncirculated state, with or without errors, it could be worth a considerable sum. This is especially true if it has been professionally graded by a respected coin grading service like PCGS or NGC, where the certification lends credibility and helps attract serious buyers. Now, here's the big reveal. While most 1,988 quarters are worth just their face value or a bit more to collectors, a rare, pristine, error-free, or uniquely flawed 1988 Washington quarter dollar could fetch a jaw-dropping price, up to $80,000. Imagine that, a single quarter from 1988 worth $80,000. It just goes to show that sometimes, the most valuable treasures are hiding in plain sight. So next time you're sorting through your change, remember this story. Take a close look at those quarters because you might just hold a small piece of history, and wealth, in your hand. Today, we're focusing on a classic piece of American history, the Washington quarter dollar from 1973. This coin might seem like any ordinary quarter in your pocket, but once you learn its backstory, mint details, and collector demand, you'll see why some examples are among the most coveted and valuable coins out there. Let's start by traveling back to 1973. America was in the midst of a transformational era, post-Vietnam War tensions, evolving culture, and shifting economic landscapes. Amidst this backdrop, the U.S. Mint continued its steady production of coins that symbolize American heritage. The Washington quarter had been around for over 4 decades by then, first introduced in 1932 to commemorate George Washington's 200th birthday. The coin's iconic design, featuring Washington's profile on the obverse and a proud eagle on the reverse, had become a staple of everyday American currency. The 1973 quarter was minted primarily at 2 locations, Philadelphia and Denver. Philadelphia quarters from that year bear no mint mark, while Denver quarters feature the classic D mint mark just beside Washington's ponytail. Both versions were produced in high quantities to meet circulation demands, but not all coins are created equal, and therein lies the excitement for collectors. You might wonder, with so many minted, what makes the 1973 Washington quarter so special and potentially valuable? The answer lies in rarity, condition, and those subtle, sometimes surprising errors that the mint occasionally produces. First, condition is king in the numismatic world. While millions of 1973 quarters have circulated widely, the number of these coins that survived in pristine, uncirculated condition is far smaller. Coins are graded on a detailed scale, with grades like MS 65 or higher indicating that the coin shows virtually no wear and maintains its original luster. Such coins are prized because they look as fresh as the day they left the mint, a rare find given that these coins have been in circulation for almost half a century. But the real magic happens when you encounter a 1973 quarter with a unique minting error or variation. One of the most famous errors from this year involves the double die. This means that during the coin striking process, the die, the stamp that presses the design onto the coin, shifted slightly, creating a doubled image of certain elements like the date or lettering. These double die coins are rare and highly sought after because each one is essentially a minting mistake that can't be replicated exactly. there are also off-center strikes, where the coin's image is not perfectly aligned, causing part of the design to be cut off. These errors, while seemingly flawed, are actually prized by collectors because of their rarity and uniqueness. Another intriguing error involves the so-called die cracks or cuds, where imperfections on the die cause raised lines or blobs on the coin surface. These natural quirks from the minting process add character and can drive up a coin's value significantly. For 1973 quarters, there's an especially interesting variety known as the small date and large date. Subtle differences in the size and shape of the date digits can affect a coin's collectability. The small date version is generally less common, making it more desirable for those who seek to complete their collections with rarities. Now, let's talk about grading because it plays a crucial role in determining the value. Coins certified by professional grading services like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, or NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, come with an official grade, ensuring buyers and sellers have confidence in the coin's condition. High-grade 1973 Washington quarters with verified error varieties can command serious attention in the marketplace, and what does all this mean in terms of real-world value? Most 1973 quarters in circulated condition are worth just their face value or maybe a small premium to collectors. But if you're holding a rare error coin, a perfectly preserved uncirculated specimen, or one with that elusive mint mark and date variety, the stakes change dramatically. Imagine this: a 1973 Washington quarter dollar in flawless condition, graded by a trusted service, with a notable mint error, could fetch an eye-popping price at auction. The kind of price that makes collectors and investors sit up and take notice. And here's the grand finale: the number you've been waiting for. A rare, high-grade, error or variety 1973 Washington quarter dollar has been known to sell for as much as $95,000. Yes, that's right. A single quarter, minted in 1973, can be worth $95,000 in words.so. The next time you find yourself sorting through your change, or inherit a collection from a family member, take a moment to look closely at those quarters. You might just be holding a small but powerful piece of history and fortune. Thanks for tuning in to this deep dive into the fascinating world of the 1973 Washington quarter dollar. If you enjoyed this video and want more insider insights on rare coins and hidden treasures, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you never miss a beat. Until next time, keep your eyes sharp, your coins safe, and happy collecting.